Coaches, welcome to the 55th episode of the Coaches Locker podcast with Chris Fore. 55, baby, junior sales number. What a tremendous football player that man was. All right, 55. Here's what I did. This is kind of this will be an interesting podcast, okay? So earlier tonight, we're March 26th, 2020. I did a Zoom conference call. There's this coach who's been just killing it, Justin Grandinetti, okay, a high school coach. On Twitter, it's at coach_G32. Again, follow him, check him out, at coach_G32. He's a recruiting coordinator, passing game coordinator, wide receiver coach out in North Carolina, and he has been doing these amazing clinics, okay, since we have gone into this shutdown mode because of this virus. And so he asked me to come on. I had a few guys ask me to come on and do podcast interviews and clinic talks and everything online, and that's awesome. I appreciate all the invites. I'm still working right now. I'm an assistant principal, and we've been working, so I don't have the time off a lot of you guys have. But so anyway, I did a Zoom conference call tonight on the interview process, okay? It's long. It's over an hour, about an hour and 20 minutes. What I want you to do, this is going to be an interesting one, like I said, because it was a conference call where I had a PowerPoint up and running, okay? You can get that PowerPoint right here. Go to 8laces, EIGHTLACES.org/SoCal. 8laces.org/SoCal. Scroll all the way to the bottom, okay? And when you get to the bottom of that, I got to go there now to remind myself what I called it. 8laces.org/SoCal, okay? Scroll all the way to the bottom, okay? When you get to the bottom, you'll see Zoom Clinic Interviews. Hit that, click on that, it'll open up a PDF, which is the PowerPoint I used tonight as I did this Zoom Clinic interview on interviews. I hit a little bit on a lot of different topics about the job search, but we spent the bulk of our time talking about the interview process, okay? So you're going to have to listen to this. You can listen to it whenever you want, but if you don't see my slides, it might not be as productive for you. You'll still find some value, but I'm already getting hit up on Twitter, 20 messages about how awesome and insightful and helpful this was. I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that to show you this podcast on interviews. Listen to it before you go to that next interview, because I think it will help you. I share a lot of wisdom and advice with you, not only from my experience, but the experience of other coaches, experience from superintendents and principals, as I've been researching best practices about interviews and all that stuff, okay? So check it out. Again, if you want to find the PowerPoint, download it at 8laces.org/SoCal. Scroll all the way to the bottom, and you'll see the clinic talk there. Click on that, and it takes you right to the PowerPoint, so you can follow along that way. Or you can just listen to it audio-wise as you're working out or mowing the lawn or doing whatever you're doing, and then go back and check out the PowerPoint. Either way you want to do it, help yourself. I hope it helps you in the area of interviewing. Have a tremendous day. Thanks for checking us out. We'll see you.
You are listening to the Coaches Locker podcast with Chris Fore, a place for all coaches to call home. The Coaches Locker podcast is a part of the Football Coaching Podcast Network. Please visit footballcoachingpodcast.com to hear and see our entire lineup of top football coaches coming to you every single podcast with valuable information to help you and your program. The Coaches Locker podcast with Chris Fore exists to help prepare coaches to be hired for the job of their dreams and to provide coaches with dynamite resources to become even more successful in their field. You can reach me on Twitter at Coach Fore. That's at COACHFORE. And my podcast home is at 8laces.org/podcast. That's 8laces, EIGHTLACES.org/podcast. Welcome to the Coaches Locker podcast with Chris Fore. Now, let's get after it.
thoughts will make you last. Hands up, forget about the past, 'cause you and I's everything I ever asked for. Top down round the West Coast.
All right, so guys, again, my name's Chris Fore. I'm right now, I'm an assistant principal out here in Southern California, oversee athletics, ASB, discipline, facilities. You know, some of those are my key jobs during the day. Staff development, obviously, and maintaining evaluations of our classified certificated staff. I've spent my career out here in Southern California, coached high school football for 18 years, and then I was a head coach for 8 of those years here. My last year coached at the JC level here in Southern California, which was awesome. Absolutely loved coaching at that level. Men, a lot of times in this profession, you know, you're going to get jobs and fall into jobs backwards where you weren't even planning on it. That's how I made a move to the junior college level. Wasn't even planning on it. I'd say 8, 9, 10 years ago, applied to a bunch of JC jobs, really wanted to make that move, and nothing happened at all for me. Never even sniffed an interview at that point. And then all of a sudden, one day I got a call from our local junior college. Hey, come talk some special teams with me. So I go over there to talk special teams with the head coach, Coach Hoover, here at Victor Valley College. It's literally a 5-minute walk from my house, right? So, and I've been up here since 2012 in the area. So I go over there to talk special teams with him. We talk, chalk it up, whiteboard, philosophy for about 3 hours. And I thought I was just going in there to talk with him about special teams, you know, because it's something I'm passionate about doing. And he brought me in before to talk about the shield punt. And we talked about shield punt for 3 or 4 hours, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. But then after that talk for about 3 hours about, you know, special teams, he goes, I want you to be my special teams coordinator. And I'm like, whoa, what? So, you know, it's just interesting how this business goes, man. You're looking for a job, hitting hard for it for years, nothing. And one day, hey, let's come talk special teams. I had no idea I was on a 3-hour interview. You know what I mean? So I tell guys all the time, there's an old adage, it's not, you know, what you know, it's who you know. I think in this coaching world, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. Okay, that's how you are able to get some jobs maybe you never thought you might be able to get. And so part of this whole interview process is, who are you? Who are you? Are you marketing yourself? Okay, are you creating a brand for yourself? Or are you just doing the things the old-fashioned way, and you're just living, and you got this resume on the side, and you're going to throw it out there? You know, in this day and age, you have such an opportunity with social media to create your own brand so that people know you, not you having to know people. So anyway, Chris Fore, 8 Laces Consulting. Guys, in 2011, I was basically let go. Can't say fired necessarily because I was on a year-to-year contract like most of us, but I was at a private school here in Southern California. Our numbers had taken a big hit after that 08 economy, affected our football program. Brand new superintendent came in year 5, okay? My 5th year there. Changed up a lot of stuff. One of those things he wanted to change out was the athletic director, head football coach, yours truly. So he brought me in one day before a vacation I had planned in March. Friday afternoon before my vacation, he ruined my vacation, ladies and gentlemen. Say, hey, we're going to go in a different direction. That whole phrase, right? And so that was March of like 2011. I had not created a resume in years. Like a lot of people out there, you know, you get hit up for a job. You get someone reaches out to you for a job. And so I didn't have a fresh resume at all. I think it'd been 10 years since I needed one. And I went and just Googled, you know, coaching resume. And what I found, ladies and gentlemen, is that there's not a lot of people out there who have specific, qualified, quantifiable evidence to help us, to help coaches. And so in 2011, when I went to create a resume for the first time in a decade, I'm sitting there, I really don't know where to start. And I realized at that point, man, there's nobody out there helping coaches with this stuff. I tried finding stuff on Google and on, back in that day, it was eBay on like, football coach preparation interview. There's nothing out there. And so this little side hustle, whatever you want to call it, my side consulting business, has basically developed over the last 9 years, where I never started with the intention of helping coaches. It was, I got to help myself. And so I started this website you'll see down here, coachfore.org. I created this website to market myself, okay? And so principles. And I said, I'm going to create 10 web pages, 10 pages on my website. I went and bought the domain, $10 or whatever, and developed coachfore.org. And then what I did was I just developed 10 pages. And, here's my practice philosophy. Here's how I develop my staff. Okay, and I started putting documents out there to market myself. And for a new job in 2011. And then I also got on Twitter at that time, because I was like, I got to market myself on Twitter. I got to get to know people who are looking for people. And as I started building that website, coachfore.org, I started to realize quickly, like, there's not a lot out there in this world of the job search process. And people started asking me for some of the stuff and my documents. And so that's how my 8 Laces kind of got started. And I was telling an assistant principal I work with today, like, hey, I got to get out of here a little early tonight. I'm going to do this webinar. And she's like, why do you do that? And I said, man, this is a passion. This is a hobby of mine, helping coaches with their job search. And so I think I've got a lot to share tonight on this interview process that's specific to the coaching world. But if you're here tonight, you're not a coach, I think you'll also maybe learn some things about it. But I've been an athletic administrator. That means an athletic director or athletic, assistant principal, 6 years now, and have hired a lot of head coaches, a lot of assistant coaches. And so I've been on that other side of the table, that hiring table. And I want to share some insight tonight that will help you in your quest. Some of you guys are stoked. You'll never leave your job. You're here out of curiosity. Some of you guys are in a spot right this minute. You're looking for jobs. And I get it, man, especially in this world of education. It has changed literally overnight the last 2 weeks. The world of education, the world of coaching has changed. This is my contact information, okay? Great place to reach me on Twitter and the direct messages there. I'll respond to you. And then my website, 8laces.org, coachfore.org. 8laces.org is where you can, buy some of the products, materials. Coachfore.org, I've got about 400 articles on there, a database. If you go to the very top, there's a database. You can search for a lot of different career advancement, career development help, okay, on there. And then all kinds of just articles on there as well to help you as coaches. And then my email address there you'll see as well. I'll share the same slide at the end for you too, okay? Also, I will take questions at the end. As Coach G said, he's had to kind of limit those during this because of some jokers earlier today messing with some of the clinics here. All right, one of the first things you need to do, okay? And most of this talk here is going to be about the interview as promised, but I wanted to hit on a few things that lead up to that interview. If you're in that job search process, one of the things you'll need to do is stay organized with your contacts, okay? In 2011, when I told you, when I was unemployed, first time in my life, 35 years old, looking for a job for the first time since I was like 16 in high school, right? And I applied to 176 jobs. I applied to everything from gas station manager, taxi driver, which I did for 4 months, and that's a whole nother session, man. That was fun. I drove a taxi. I was doing the Uber thing before Uber was around down in San Diego County. And, man, it was a blast. There were some nights you made no money, but I had fun meeting some cracked out weird people and some very good people. But so stay organized with something like this, okay? Create a database where you'll be able to know, okay, what's the name of the school, the position, who's the contact person there, what's their email, what's their phone number, did I send my resume yet? Because maybe you heard about a job and you reached out to that person. Hey, Mr. Athletic Director, heard your football job's open. You accepting resumes yet, okay? So keep some notes. Did you finish the application? Did you follow up at all? And so it's real important to keep yourself organized, okay? And this is a very simple document. You can create Excel, Google Documents, something like that. I get asked all the time, what should I send to the AD, okay? What should I send to the AD? Here's the 5 things you'll want to send out to that AD, okay? Here's the 5 things. And guys, I'm going to overload you with information tonight. I'm going to put this whole presentation on my website, and I'll show you at the end how to find it, okay? It's going to go on, if you want to write this down right now, check this out, write this down, 8laces.org, 8laces.org//SoCal. S is in Sam, O is in Oregon, C-A-L, SoCal. 8laces.org//SoCal. I will put this whole talk on there as a PDF, okay? So you don't have to write a lot down now. You'll get the whole talk on there as a PDF, 8laces.org//SoCal, okay? And there's another one on there already about special teams. All right, so 5 things you want to do. First of all, it's very important when you're applying for that job, you'll want to apply, the way that they have you applying. So, for instance, in California, that's on a website called EdJoin. A lot of your states have those, those type of websites. You apply right through there. Don't bug the AD. If it says on the job announcement, no phone calls, the quickest way to not get that job is by calling that athletic director. If it says on there, do not call, folks. But if it says do not call, it doesn't say anything about not emailing, okay? So reach out to them. I always encourage people, reach out. Now, as an athletic director, athletic assistant principal right now, not enough people are using the phone. I tell you coaches that all the time who reach out to me, use the phone. Make a phone call unless it says not to call, because everybody now is just emailing. And guys, if you make that phone call, it puts your name on their radar, okay? And the phone call might be as simple as, hey, Mr. Fore, I'm just calling about that head football coach position. I wanted to let you know I've applied through EdJoin, but can I send you my resume as well? Can I send you my portfolio on email for you to take a look at? And as an athletic director right now, we just did this last year. We had a head football coach search, okay? And we hired this guy right here on my banner, Coach Stewart, okay? But anytime somebody called me, and last year when I did a head football coach search here in Southern California, I had 3 phone calls, okay? Now, I'm not in a real desirable place. We're out about 2 hours east of Los Angeles in the high desert, okay? So that's one reason. If I was down in San Diego, Orange County, I'd probably have 100 applicants. We had 38, 39 applicants, something like that. But I only received 3 phone calls on that. So I'm going to take some time. If someone's making an effort to call me, I'm going to listen to them. So I encourage coaches now, make phone calls, because too many people use just email. Okay, so the first thing, as I said, you're going to want to follow the directions. Make sure you follow the directions on the job flyer. I can't emphasize this enough. A lot of coaches out there are very unorganized, and they're not following the most basic directions on how to apply for the job. That's the first way to go to the end of the pile. Okay? Next, send your resume, obviously. That's not earth-shattering. Send your cover letter. Guys, I had guys last year apply to our job. Now, we had them apply on EdJoin, okay? But I also accepted their applications through our email. I had 4 or 5 coaches just send me an email with just their resume attached. They did not even have this audacity. They did not even spend the time to write, Mr. Fore, Chris, I am expressing my interest in the head football coach position at your high school. Please see the resume attached. They didn't take 20 seconds to do that. They just attached a resume. They put maybe in a subject line, football coach, or you're hiring a football coach, or I had a guy just put resume. What I did when somebody sent a resume to me with nothing even in the body of the email, I didn't even look at the resume. I just deleted it. If you don't have time to introduce yourself in the email, I don't have time for you. Okay? So that's my philosophy. Maybe others have a different philosophy, but send a cover letter. And what you can do, guys, I tell guys all the time, I do this. Your cover letter, which serves to introduce you, okay, just put that in the body of your email, but then also attach the cover letter and attach your resume, okay? And then, obviously, you're going to want to add maybe your coaching manual, or as a lot of guys call it, a portfolio. Okay, you'll want that manual or portfolio. Now, my coaching portfolio is about 75 pages. It's so big I can't share it. So you'll need to minimize that. I've got a lot of pictures and a lot of color and all that sort of thing in it. Okay? But you might need to minimize it, make it smaller so that you can attach it as a resume. Attach it to your email. But I think it's very important to attach your email. And then another thing, letters of recommendation. Okay? You'll want to send that athletic director 3 or 4 letters of recommendation. Okay? An important thing to do. All right, so that's 5 keys on contacting an AD. Obviously, this is before that interview even happens, okay? So I reached out several years ago. I spoke at AFCA. I did a talk a little similar to this, but we hit on a lot of things, not just the interview. And we're going to get to the interview, I promise. I want to share some other golden nuggets with you first. So I reached out to a bunch of NC2A coaches and high school athletic directors who at the time that I was preparing to speak at AFCA, at the time they had job openings, okay? And I wanted to reach out. And here's some things they said that applies to that. One NC2A head coach said he received 76 resumes for 2 GA openings in 24 hours, okay? So you can see they're receiving a lot of these. At least 15 of those guys, and I just said this, they did not even reference which opening they were applying for. Are you kidding me? Guys, if you take away anything from tonight, take away this communication piece. Guys applying for a NC2A GA spot, just sending coaches their resume. That's baloney. 10 inquiries included attachments only, not even a letter of interest. I hit that. 10 did not even include a cover letter. Okay? Another thing, Division 2 head coach told me. They said, follow the directions laid out in the job posting. I already covered that. Follow the directions. Have a personalized cover letter. Folks, I'm embarrassed for some of y'all who send emails to an assistant principal or an athletic director applying for a job that has stuff misspelled. I've received, we'll get into that in a second, documents that have not been proofread. Highlight any connections. This is so important. It's something I do every time I apply for a job. Okay? What I mean by this here, highlight any connections. Look at who's at that school where you're applying for. What kind of connection do you have at that school? Maybe, for instance, you taught with a teacher there 10 years ago. Maybe you know a board member's wife. Maybe you're applying for a head basketball job and you're buddies with the head baseball coach. Make those kind of connections in your email. Because if I get a guy who says, hey, Mr. Fore, I'm applying for your head basketball job. I know your head baseball coach, John Stewart, who, has spoken highly of you and really enjoys the community he works in. I'd love to talk more about this job with you. What's the first thing I'm going to do? I'm going to call John Stewart. Hey, coach, do you know Coach G here applied for my baseball job? Do you know him? Or basketball job? Do you know who he is? What can you tell me about him? So make that personal connection in that email. Form letter. This blows me away too. Check this out, okay? When sending your cover letter, I received cover letters made out to a whole different school because the coach was so unorganized, they didn't even go back in there and change the heading, okay? And so when you do that, let me go back. I thought I had it in here, but I didn't. I had one of these coaches said that he received an email, "Dear so-and-so," and that so-and-so was the head coach at Colorado. And this coach, I think, was at Colorado School of Mines or Colorado Mesa. And it was sent to a whole different school. The email, the cover letter, it was all addressed to somebody totally different. Guys, my philosophy as a head coach when I hire assistants, my philosophy as an athletic director when I hire head coaches, as an assistant principal when I hire head coaches, if you can't bother to send the email to the right guy, what kind of coach are you? How organized are you going to be in your program? Let's talk briefly about resumes. Before we get into more specifics on the interview. Guys, you do not need an objective on your resume anymore. That's old school. That objective was for the old times when you would walk around a trade show and you would say, hey, my objective is to get a broom salesman job. Okay, my objective is to secure a position in XYZ. Unless you're going out to a coaching conference, maybe a clinic, AFCA, if you're not going to one of those things and you're just applying online, don't have an objective on there. It just wastes space, okay? Guys, look at this. Look at the summary of qualifications. Research shows in the business world, and I can tell you this from an athletic director point of view, you got 30 to 45 seconds to catch the eye of the reader on your resume. If you give me a summary of qualifications and I'm looking at 100 resumes, I do not have the time to read all this BS, okay? So, delete all this stuff. This is way too long, okay? Look at this. Here's another example of a resume. I took off his names and all that. This is something I help coaches do. Part of my business is helping to write resumes. Guys, this resume is awful. Again, if you have a resume, take a good look at it tonight. If it looks like this, change it. Fix it up. Move it along. Because this will never be read. Okay? This is way too long and obtrusive. And nobody's going to spend the time reading a resume like this. Okay? Again, now check this out. Your bullet points, right? The goal of your resume is to get into the interview room. This is from a Division I wide receiver coach a few years ago. Look at the first bullet point. Gentlemen, ladies, if there's anything you can learn tonight about resumes, responsible for coaching the wide receiver position and holding installation meetings to implement the offense. Of course you freaking did that. Every wide receiver coach in the nation, every defensive backs coach in the nation, high school level, college level, guess what you do? If you're a wide receiver coach, you are responsible for coaching the wide receiver position. Outstanding. That is a waste of a bullet point, ladies and gentlemen. Look at the next one. Enforcing team rules within the position group. I hope you enforce the rules. That makes no sense to create these bullet points that just spits back to the reader what you're not listing what you've done. You're listing the job title. Okay? All you're doing is outlining. I already know what a wide receiver coach does. Inspire me. Tell me why I need to bring you in the interview room. Okay? Coached 4 all-conference wide receivers over the past 2 years. That doesn't mean a lot to me. What if before you got there, what if they had 6 the 2 years before you got there? And you only coached 4. Okay? How about this bullet point? Helped to develop 4 all-conference wide receivers in the last 2 years, comma, before this they had 0 in the 2 years before I started. What? Now you got my attention. Break down opponent film. That's the stupidest. Now listen, I don't know how many of you are in here. I can't see that right now. 50, 60 of you in here. I'm going to offend some of you with this, and I'm okay with that. If you have breakdown opponent film on your resume, delete it tonight, ladies and gentlemen. That doesn't tell me a thing. Make recruiting calls to coaches and prospects. I don't care about that. I expect you to do that. How about this? As a wide receiver coach at this Division I school, helped to produce the number one leading wide receiver in our conference in 3 of 4 years I was there. Now you got my attention. Passing offensive yards increased 275% compared to the 2 years before I took over. Now you've got my attention. How about wide receivers dropped 30% less balls in my first year? Now you've got my attention. Do you see where I'm heading? This isn't a seminar on resumes, so we're going to hit this briefly. Look at this, okay? Again, we're going to hit resumes just briefly because they lead into the interview. Don't need a summary on your things anymore. This is a lot of wasted space up here. You want to draw attention to your title. If I have to look too far on here as to what your exact title was, I'm not going to read it, okay? So, and look how confusing this dude's resume is. 2014 to the present, okay? He's got some bullet points, and then 2014, more bullet points. I'm already confused as a reader of this resume. I don't even want to read it. I'm going to move on. Again, bullet point down here. Develop and implement an exemplary football program that will provide the best possible education for each student athlete, both on and off the field. That's the dumbest bullet point I've ever heard. I hope you're doing that. You're the head football coach, homeboy. Okay? Increase school enrollment through an active recruiting campaign. As you see here, I wrote, prove it. That's a better bullet point than the one I just said. But to make that stronger, guys, increase school enrollment by 7% through an active recruiting campaign. The next one, initiated innovative fundraising efforts to help boost the economic position of the program. Prove that to me. Initiated innovative fundraising efforts that increased fundraising from $7,000 to $12,000 in my first year. Huh? Now you got my attention. Increased fundraising by 50% with 2 new programs I brought in. Huh? Now you got my attention. Install offense, defense, special teams. Stupidest bullet point I've ever seen in my life. Okay. So again, objectives, erase them. Education, we said bring attention to the degree. You'll see here how I list education on the resumes I make for coaches. I bold and capitalize the degree you got. Make a little smaller the university, okay? And then check this out. Look at all this experience. Guys, this is way too many bullet points. And it's all a bunch of crappy bullet points. Coach the offensive line. That doesn't intrigue me. Again, here, the way he's got this set up, coaching experience up here, down here, and then field experience. This is too confusing. I'm not intrigued. I don't even want to read it. Okay? Again, way too many bullet points. Again, NCAA FBS Director of Football Operations, when he was looking for an assistant. Okay, the ones that stand out have good vocabulary, are free of any grammatical errors, mistakes, and are all symmetrical. It's got to look good. You got to use a good system. I also like to see simple, easy to understand transitions from one job to the next. That's so important. I like to see someone who's been committed to a place for a little bit. I understand opportunities arise as a younger coach. You might be moving around, but I prefer to see some commitment. That's important. All right, let's talk about the interview now. Now we're going to specifically get into this interview. And again, I've written a lot about resumes in one of my books, Insider's Guide to Scoring Your Next Coaching Job. I'll show you how to get that later. And then on my website, a lot of free advice about resumes. One of the most important things you can do in an interview, folks, is prepare your butt off. I cannot tell you how important it is to shock the interview panel. Prepare for your big day. What do I mean by this? Know more about that job than the panel does. Look, a lot of times these panels, guys, they're put together by somebody at the district, right? Let's talk about it. You might have director of HR. How much, depending on the size of the district. But in my district I'm in right now, for instance, okay, we got just 2 high schools. But we got 17 schools in our district. How much does our director of HR, a former football coach himself, coached football with him back in the 90s myself. How much does he really know about the needs of our football program as the director of HR when he's maybe sitting in those interviews, right? So you might have a director of HR. You might have the principal. Hopefully he knows a good deal about your job. But you might have some teacher or a community member, booster club parent. You might have somebody from another school. You know, so many districts have such a wide variety of interview policies and procedures. You might have a board member, okay, on the interview panel who knows hardly anything about the exact needs, desires of that program. Folks, if there's anything you hear tonight about the interview, it's shock the panel with how much you know. I went on an interview one time for a principal job, okay, where I had read all this research on their school, all this history on their school. I knew that school year, that next school year, I was applying, interviewing for a job to start the next school year. I knew that it was going to be their 110th anniversary of schooling in that community. That school is 110 years old. So I threw that in there at some point. I said, you guys are coming up on your 110th anniversary at this school. And the superintendent was in that interview. He said, wait, what? And I said, you guys are coming into your 110th anniversary. And he looked at another person in the room and said, is that right? So what do you think that did to the superintendent? That caught his attention. And he said to me, how did you know that, Mr. Fore? And I said, I've done my research on the school. I didn't tell him exactly where I found it. I didn't tell him it's on his own school's website. I didn't want to make him look stupid. I just told him, well, I've done quite a bit of research for this position because I really want it. That shocked him. Know more about the job than the panel does. I was on an interview for an athletic director job, 2012. One of the questions was, what changes do you think need to happen in an athletic program? And I laid out the fact that we needed to change the coaching turnover. And I said, for instance, your softball program's only won 30% of their games the last 7 years. The reason that is because you've had 4 head coaches. And one of the board members said this exact quote. I'll never forget it. I had no idea we were going through coaches like this in the softball program. And then that board member looks to the principal and says, why is this happening? And then they had a 3-minute conversation during my interview. The board member turns to me and says, how did you know we've had 4 different coaches in 7 years? And I said, well, sir, there's a website called Max Preps. And I'm able to go in there and do a lot of research. I can tell you how many coaches you've had for each of your sports. I can tell you your win-loss percentage in the last 7 or 8 years here at this school for each of your sports. He was blown away. And I got that job, and the intel I got after that, when I left the room, that board member who had a lot of clout and juice for that job, he turned to the superintendent and said, that's our guy. So shock the interview panel. Prepare your butt off, okay? As a coach position, know about their returners they have. Know about their schedule. Know about their opponents. Know about their facilities. Their league setup. Okay? Maybe they're in a 5-team league. Maybe that league champion. Maybe they've had one school has dominated that league the last 4 years. But boy, you know their head coach just got a job somewhere else, and they just graduated a lot of seniors. Bring that information into the interview. I can't tell you enough. Every time I go out on an interview, when I've been in different places, as I said, 2012, I went and interviewed for this AD job, okay? I reached out on Twitter to a member of the media. I called that media guy to pick his brain about Excelsior Charter School. I went to be an AD. I picked his brain for 30 minutes. I called another athletic director in the league. I knew a friend of his, so we had a mutual friend. I called him up. Bill, tell me about this job. Tell me about the good. Tell me about the bad. What's the league think of them? Okay? What's the league think of the school? So do your job. Do as much research as you can. Hey, if you want the job, you're going to do the research. Shock the interview panel. Know more about it than the panel does. Who's the decision makers on campus? Check this out. One of the things I do when I go to interview, tell guys this all the time. try to find out who's going to be on that interview panel. Okay, and that's really hard sometimes, but I found out a job in 06 I went to and I got as an athletic director, head football coach. I found out the names. They're going to have 5 people on an interview panel. And I was told, oh, the CEO is going to be on the interview panel. I went on their school's website, found out CEO, Barbara Schaffner. I looked at their Max Preps roster. Oh, wow, look, there's a Matthew Schaffner. So guess what? I know the CEO who's going to be in my interview. I know she's not just a CEO. She's also a mom of a football player. How do you think I talked to her in that interview? As a CEO or as the mom? Both. The answer is both, okay? But it was very important for me to know going into that interview, this lady here you're going to meet, this CEO, she's also a mom of a kid in that program. That was powerful for me to know. Top 3 mistakes. So check this out. That interview in 06, okay, that superintendent who hired me at 06 at a private school, he was in education for about 40 years, and he was an assistant superintendent of HR. He interviewed more than 1,000 people, he says, okay? As an assistant superintendent of HR for a decade, he interviewed more than 1,000 people. And so I interviewed him. When I wrote this book years ago, I interviewed him. Here are the top 3 mistakes from more than 1,000 interviews. So remember, this wasn't just coaching interviews, but these were educational interviews. Top 3 mistakes people in education make. And I just hit this. I just told you this. The candidate doesn't do their homework. Okay? Guys, again, if there's anything you take from this tonight on interviewing, do your homework. As Dr. Baker told me, when a candidate has not done their homework, his exact quote, they fall out of good graces very quickly. Okay? Listen, if you're going out to my school in the middle of the desert, okay, where our resources are very low, where we have, 80% of our kids getting free lunch every day, where 20% of our kids don't have the internet at home, don't have a device at home, don't come in and tell me you're going to run your program like you did in South Orange County where you got 100% of your kids on devices, okay? 100% of your kids have the internet. Know your school. If you don't do your homework on that school, you're going to fall out of good graces very quickly. Number two mistake, being too cocky. And there's that fine line. As Dr. Baker said here, tremendous advice. Be confident, not cocky. Be confident. Be proud of who you are. Sit up straight. Smile. Shake the hands. Not now. Maybe not now with this corona. But be confident. Don't be cocky and arrogant. And a lot of coaches are cocky and arrogant when they come into these interviews. And listen, right here, if you haven't done your homework, don't come in telling me how, listen, of a school in 13 hours hiring a head basketball coach at Excelsior Charter. Interviewing this basketball coach. That school had not won a league championship in 13 years. Why? Coaching, but also they hadn't had very good basketball players, right? Don't come in here and tell me you're going to win a league championship in your first year because you've won 4 in the past 6. You won 4 in the past 6 because of the kids you had and the league you were in. Okay? If you don't do your homework, you might come across too cocky and arrogant. Third mistake coaches make, nonverbal communication. Dressed poorly. I hit on that earlier. Okay? I had a coach reach out to me last week. Might be on a call or not, I don't know. But he said, hey, I'm going back for my second interview. My first interview, I wore the suit. I wore the tie. What should I wear for my second interview? And I said, Coach, wear the suit and tie again. Because it's okay to be overdressed. It's not okay to be underdressed. It's okay to be overdressed. It's not okay to be underdressed. So, and then he just hit me up yesterday and the DMs, the Twitter. He said, hey, Coach, man, I had that interview today. It was kind of a walkthrough around the campus with the principal. First thing he said was, man, Coach, you're dressed sharp. You're dressed nice. You didn't have to wear that tie again today, but man, you look good. You look sharp. And he said, hey, thanks for that advice. Again, you cannot dress down, but you might make the mistake of not dressing nice enough, okay? You'll never make the mistake of being overdressed. You might make the mistake of being underdressed, okay? So if you have no or little to no eye contact, your voice quality poor. Again, my superintendent who I interviewed for this, I said, what do you mean by voice quality poor? He said, man, if I'm hiring a head football coach, you better not be this meek little guy, right? He says, if I'm hiring an assistant principal of discipline, you better not be this meek little dude sitting in the corner during the interview. Have some panache, have some confidence, okay? And then this one was interesting. He said too, not having any humor. Guys, look, I sit on interview panels a lot now, especially as assistant principal for teachers, administrative aides, security, custodians. I sat on an interview panel last year for a principal at our junior high school. When you're on an interview panel, those are long days. They're boring sometimes. I can't tell you how boring some interviews are. Have a little sense of humor as you go in there. Try to lighten up the room, okay? Because, guys, a lot of times, man, a lot of times, you and I both know this. A lot of times decisions have been made before an interview happens, okay? And I don't know what the percentage of that is, but a lot of times the interview's also legit, okay? And they're really using the interview as a way to find their next candidate. The personality, the resume gets you in the room. The resume ain't going to get you in the job. The resume is going to get you in the room. The portfolio is going to get you in the room. The letters of recommendation are going to get you in the room. The interview is what's going to win you that job or lose you that job. So have some personality. Coaches, loosen up in your interviews. Loosen up. And again, I'm telling you this from a lot of interviews, from being on the other side of that table where it's a long day sometimes. You're interviewing maybe 7 guys for 30 to 45 minutes. You're going one interview to the next. That personality is going to win the interview, okay? Have a little sense of humor when you're in there. All right, look, top 3 things a coach can do. So look, we just hit on the mistakes. This is from that same interview with my superintendent who interviewed more than 1,000 people during his time. 3 things a coach can do. Be prepared to answer questions succinctly. So, hey, listen, Google sometime tonight or the next time you're going to go interview, Google Coach Fore interview database. Years ago, I started collecting questions from you guys, from coaches who went out on interviews, and I started just putting those in a database, okay? And there's a lot there. I've never seen a database like it for coaches. So again, Coach Fore interview database. A guy I know here in California had an interview yesterday for a JUCO head coaching job here in California. They did it on Skype because all the districts are shut down. Okay, but he's gonna shoot me those interview questions. If you're watching, Coach, don't forget, my man. But go through those interview questions. Okay, write down answers. Practice your interview, guys, because you'll want to come up with those frequently asked interview questions. You'll want to come up with good answers. So prepare. When I say here, and when Dr. Baker told me succinctly, one of my main faults, guys, I can talk for way too long in an interview where I'm not answering a question. So again, you might have, 7 questions, 8 questions, and they only have 30 minutes. Well, that's about, 30 divided by 8. I suck at math, but, I'm looking at about 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes, an answer. You want to be succinct, okay? So, and I always like having three answers to every question, So when they ask me maybe, hey, what's your philosophy on discipline? Boom, boom, boom. Okay, discipline's got to be relationship-based. Okay, that's first of all, and I'll share an anecdote about that. Also, I believe discipline, you got to be firm, fair, and consistent with discipline. And I'll hit a little anecdote about that. Third thing about discipline, I really don't believe punitive discipline helps a lot anymore. I think we got to build programs that will help students improve on the discipline they just had. For instance, I started a vape cessation program at my school. And so this year, instead of just sending a kid home, I'm going to send a kid to a 4-hour class on vaping now. So again, you can see there, guys, hit your answer quickly. Here's what I believe. Here's how I do it. Here's real life. Okay? Don't be too short. Don't be too wrong. It kind of needs to be just right. But this is where you got to put in the homework on that. Another thing a coach can do, demonstrate a sincere desire to be chosen. Don't be too casual. Okay? Now, I've talked to guys, I don't know on this one. I've talked to guys like, hey, I'm going out to this interview, but I don't even want this job. Why are you wasting your time? Kind of I see it as. Now, it's good. You know, some people say, well, no interview is a wasted interview because you'll learn something. I kind of agree on that. But I also don't want to get some kind of reputation depending on the community and you're just out interviewing. You know, that's not good. So don't act too casual like, this ain't no big deal. I don't care if I get the job or not. The panel has to really believe you want the job. What's one of the number one ways to show that? Doing your homework. Know everything you can about that community, men, women. If you're in California, they got the California dashboard now. Get on that California dashboard. Study their test results. Study their discipline. Study their absenteeism. You know, that stuff's important. Again, we talked about that. I'm not going to hit the drum anymore on that. But, man, get to know that school. Be aware of your nonverbal interaction, okay? So you'll see earlier, Dr. Baker said that nonverbal stuff gets coaches in trouble during interviews. And then he says here, one of the top 3 things a coach can do, be aware of your nonverbal action. Really work on your appearance. Really work on your eye contact. And he said here, voice quality. I don't know if I'm coming across too loud to you guys. I'm a loud guy. Probably a lot of you coaches, you're loud guys. We got it. My wife always comes in here while I'm on conference calls or calls with coaches, and she always comes in here, quiet down. And I'm always like, sorry, babe. So I always have to remember in an interview, I always got to remember, tone myself down a little bit, back myself up a little bit, okay? So be aware of your voice quality. And then, as Dr. Baker said here, smile. Again, try to loosen up that room, guys. I can't tell you how important that is. All right, what should I bring? I get this question all the time. Okay, what should I bring? Let me time check here. Okay, I got about 11 minutes left. All right, what should I bring to that interview? First of all, you want to ask. Okay, I think it's really important. Let me back up. When you get that email, congratulations, Coach Fore. We'd like to bring you in to interview you for our head football coach job next Thursday at 2:30. Boom. I will usually respond to that email as fast as I can because it shows I'm interested, okay? And I'll ask a few questions. One of the first questions I'll ask, or first of all, say thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to interview for the head football coach job at 8 Laces University. I'm very humbled and excited that you would choose me for this opportunity. I can't wait to get to know you guys better. I have a few questions. Number one, can you tell me who's going to be on the interview panel? I understand if you can't tell me that, but can you at least let me know what I should expect? How many people will be on the room? And what does that panel consist of? And then I'll put in parentheses, parents, question mark, students, question mark, teachers, question mark. And folks, I had an HR lady once. She sent me, here's the 5 people in the interview. She sent me their names and their titles. And then like 45 minutes later, she emails me back and says, I just got in trouble. I wasn't supposed to tell you who's in the interview. Please, please, please. She wrote please like 10 times. I'm not kidding. Please, 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 please do not tell anybody who's going to be in that interview. Well, right away, folks, I walked into that interview. I knew so much about each of those people. I knew so much about what made those guys tick, each one of them, okay? Because I Googled the heck out of them. I stalked their LinkedIn. I stalked their Facebook. I'm not kidding, okay? So I've had a couple different times I've interviewed over the years where I was able to find out who was going to be in that room. So here, you know, if I interviewed for a principal position last summer, and I knew the guy who was the head of their teacher union, and I reached out to him, okay? I'm not going to say too much. I don't know where this video is going to go, but I had a pretty good idea of who's going to be in that interview room, okay? So there's ways that you can find that out, and it's going to help you. I'm not saying be shady or none of that, but if you can find out who's in the room, find out who's in the room. And so on that return email, thank them for the opportunity. Ask who's going to be in the room if you can. Ask how long you should prepare for, because that's good mentally to know. Am I going to be in there for 30 minutes in this interview, or am I going to be in there for 3 hours? You don't want to be shocked that way. So ask who's going to be in an interview room. Ask, and I should have created slides for this, my apologies. Who's going to be in the interview room? Who's going to, how long you should prepare for, okay? And then, what should I bring? What should I bring? Ask that question. Here's why you ask that. Sometimes they'll say, you don't need to bring anything. The interview panel is going to have copies of everything. Sometimes they'll tell you, you can bring whatever you want. If they say you can bring whatever you want, bring a copy of a resume for every person on that panel. Because sometimes districts don't even give those people on that panel your resume. Okay? And it's important for that district, that panel, to have a copy of your resume. Okay? So ask what you should bring. And then you want to ask, the fourth question to ask on that email back to them is, how many interviews will there be for this position? Is this a one-shot deal? Or is this a 2-shot or 3-shot deal? Usually they'll tell you. Usually they'll say, oh, this is round 1. We're going to interview 7 people round 1. And round 2 will be next week. Okay? But again, it's important for your mindset to know, like, okay, what am I heading into here? So ask those 4 questions. So what should I bring? Ask first. The panel is usually on an incredibly tight schedule. They might not want anything. So if you walk in there with a book for each one of them, that might tick them off a little bit. So ask first, okay? If it's okay to bring something, I think you keep it simple. Resume, portfolio. Now, in that portfolio, you can have your letters of recommendation in there, in the back of it. But those are the 2 things you want to bring. Your resume and your portfolio. Now, you might show up. You might start passing those resumes out, and they say, oh, we already got a copy of these. Perfect, thank you. I just want to make sure you each got them. So then put those back in your folder. Pass out your portfolios. Guys ask me all the time, do I really need to make a copy for each person? I advise it. If you really want the job, man, if it's a job of your dreams, I advise it. Maybe you go make 1 color copy and then the rest are black and white, but I think that's what you want to bring. Okay, all right. 6 thing, we just kind of hit on this a little bit, so I'm going to move through it quickly. 6 things to ask before your interview panel. Who's going to be on it? We talked about that. How long should I plan for? I'm sorry. I forgot I already made this up. Dang it. I apologize. I'm unprepared. How many interviews will there be? Where can I find a 2020 game schedule? This is important to help you prepare. Again, I haven't interviewed for a head coach job in a long time, but when I did, I'd always want to know that next schedule. Next year, what am I looking at? Because did they already make the schedule? Might be some contracts they can't get out of or whatever, but I want to have an idea so that when I walk into that interview, I can talk about that schedule a little bit. Okay, another thing, how many candidates are you interviewing for this position? Sometimes they'll tell you that, sometimes they won't, okay? But again, guys, if you can find out who some of those people are, again, man, that's a really, really good thing to know. Because honestly, let's be honest here. Sometimes if you're able to figure out who's in that panel, who's being interviewed, you might know, am I walking into a sham interview? And I cover a sham interview as a chapter in my book. A sham interview is a fake interview. And you and I have both been on sham interviews. They are a total fake waste of time. Folks, an 18-minute interview for a head football coach job, that's a sham interview. And if you, again, Google Coach Fore sham interviews, I've written a little bit about that. But if you know you're going on a sham interview, you might not want to take a day off of work. You might not want to burn a day, a personal day. Or you might not want to fly to another state. You might not want to drive 5 hours. And what I mean by that is, if you know that this hot coach, he really wants that job, and his experience, his resume is a lot better than yours, you really think he's going to get that job? Why waste your time? Sure, sometimes an interview is good to go on. I'm not going to say it's not good to go on, but it might change your mentality a little bit about going on that interview, okay? And I do think every interview is a good interview to take. You never know who's going to be on that panel who might be able to help you at some other point. You never know. Maybe that hotshot coach who's the favorite for that job, maybe he's going on another interview and now you're second place and you get it because he left or something. So, but if you can find out who's going to be on that interview, again, hey, local media is very important. I just applied for the down out here in San Diego assistant CIF commissioner position. I'll lay it out there. I don't care. I applied for that job. I really wanted that job. I didn't even get in the interview room. Now, I'm not in San Diego, and I understand why I didn't even get an interview there. I really do. I think I do a heck of a job. I have confidence. I would have done a great job in that role as an assistant commissioner down there in San Diego. But the truth of the matter is, I'm not even in that section right now. California's in 10 different sections. So it makes a lot of sense to hire somebody in that section. I reached out to 7 or 8 different media outlets down there just to get a sense of who are they. Do they have a favorite? Are they leaning towards somebody? Now, one of the names who kept coming up, yeah, this name keeps coming up in the media. He didn't even make the final job, he didn't get the job. They haven't hired it yet, but I was shocked by that. And if you're on here now, man, they missed the boat, I think, there, be honest with you. But again, I had a really good idea of what was in the media down there through that. So reach out to the media to figure out who might be in there. Here's the other thing that does. If you're a really good coach with a really good reputation and you might want it leaked. Leaking your name to a media member that you're going for that job, that could help you get that job. Could it hurt you in your current job? Yes. This is very political and very dicey. I can help you through that, when the time comes. But sometimes it's a really good thing to leak your name to the media about a job. This all depends on who you are. It all depends on where you're going, trying to go. Okay? But that could be very helpful for you. I know I get off on some tangents. I'm trying to give you guys as much as I can. And then, as I said, how long before the first and second interview? That's a really good thing to ask. Going back to this one, how many candidates you're interviewing for? Here's a little secret. When you go into the interview, when you get there, and a lot of times they have you sign in. When you sign in, take a look at the coaches who have already signed in. Because guys, I've learned a lot. Some coaches who I've given that idea to, they've learned a lot through that, okay? So take a little gander. Sign your name really slow and date it really slow and look at who signed in before you because you might learn a whole lot. Here's the other thing. You might learn, oh, wow, that coach is here to interview? I thought he loved that job where he is. Interesting. I wonder if that was this guy recently fired and that's not in the media yet and now that job might be open? See, looking at that list of people who's interviewed maybe before you, and then when you come back in after your interview, hey, do I need to sign out and see if anybody signed in under your name? Just a little free piece of advice. You learn a lot there. Okay, you might learn a lot there. All right, let's look at our next thing here. Navigating 3 interesting interview questions. And I know we're hitting that 6:30 mark. Coach G, I apologize. I'm trying to get these guys a lot of info.
You're good, Coach.
Yeah,
You're good.
all right. I'll stop my timer. We got about 15, 20 minutes, guys. We'll finish this thing up. Navigating 3 intriguing interview questions. I wrote an article on this. Again, it's at coachfore.org. Let's talk about it briefly, though. What accomplishments are you most proud of? Folks, think about that. The key here, listen, I can't explain this enough. The key here is not just what you're most proud of, but how you guys accomplish that. Not only what you're most proud of, okay? Because a lot of coaches, again, I'm talking about from the other side of the table now, a lot of coaches are going to tell you what they're most proud of, but what they're most proud of doesn't tell me how you got there. And how you got there. The recipe for that success is more important than what it is, if that makes sense, okay? Tell me about one of your failures and how you overcame it. Or another popular interview question: What are three of your three of your weakest strengths? You really got to think through this, guys. Be honest. Be honest. Be honest with what you did. Be honest with the screw up you did. But talk about how you overcame it and how you grew from it. And then listen, limit your lawsuit exposure possibilities. What I mean by this, guys, I serve as an expert witness in court cases. I just testified for 3 days up in Oakland back in January. I was on the witness stand for 12 hours, okay, as a witness. I can't say too much about it. Well, so there was a football injury, very bad football injury, and they brought me in as an expert to give my opinion on how the coaching staff handled that. I was hired by the school district, so I was supporting the coaches in this one. But you never ever, tell me about one of your biggest failures. 3 years ago, my district was sued because of a hazing incident we had. No. So don't expose yourself liability-wise, okay? Another intriguing interview question: where do you see yourself in 5 years? Okay, that can be kind of a setup for that's a tricky question. And again, coachfore.org, Google this because I wrote a long article on it. Okay, match your resume, don't lie. Match your resume, don't lie. What I mean by that, guys, is if your resume shows you move every 2, 3, 4 years, don't say, oh, I want to be here for the next 15 years. I want this to be my last job, because your resume doesn't match that, if that makes sense, okay? So be honest. Be honest. I interviewed at a job once. My goal in the future, I want to be at the district office as a director of human resources. That's a job I want in my future, okay? So I interviewed for an elementary school position one time, and they said to me, why do you want this job? You've never even been in an elementary school. That's an elephant in a room. I can't hide that. So I said, you know what? You're right. I want to spend 5 years of my life at this principal position of this elementary school because I want that in my background for what my last job is going to be. My last job, my dream last job is director of human resources, and I know I'll have that job someday. In order to have that job, I got to know how an elementary school works, and I believe I can bring a lot to this elementary school, but that's where I see myself down the road. After 5 years, this job will help me to get my next job. So you want to be honest. You want to make sure that they don't feel like a stepping stone, okay? So it's tricky, but again, make sure that your answer matches your resume in that sense, okay? All right, why should we hire you over all the other candidates? Great question, okay? This came up in a Facebook group I'm a part of with football coaches. And guys, again, if you've done your homework and you know that school, you'll know what they most need, okay? What they most need. So you want to match your gifts, talents, abilities, and experience with what the school most needs. And this, I think, is the biggest mistake coaches make. They don't do their homework on the school, so they don't really know what that school needs. Every single school has different needs for when they fly a head football coach job. And if you don't know, if you haven't done your homework on why they need a new head football coach, you've not prepared yourself well. You're not going to answer this question well, okay? So match your gifts, talents, abilities, and experience with what that school needs. 3 reasons athletic directors not getting back to you. I get this question all the time. And so I wrote an article on this. We're wrapping up here, guys. 3 reasons the AD's not getting back to you. Very simple. Number 1, he or she is very busy. Athletic directors are very busy. Number 2, you're not the guy or girl. You're not the person. So you're bugging them for an answer. They're not getting back to you because either they're too busy or you're not the person, and they're waiting on HR to tell you they're not the person because that's not their job sometimes. So they're waiting on HR, and they're going to call HR and be like, man, Fore is bugging the crap out of me. Can you please send him that denial email? And then the third thing, there's nothing to say right now, okay? Maybe they're in a holding pattern. Maybe they're doing some background research on you. Or maybe they're doing some background research on their first guy, and you're their second guy. So those are the 3 reasons that ADs don't get back to you. Guys, I've got some resources on my website, some different books I've written, okay, some different books I've written. This one here, An Insider's Guide to Scoring Your Next Coaching Job, it's 14 chapters. I think we covered 2 or 3 of those chapters tonight. Guys, I got it on my website right now for you. It's $4.99, 8laces.org. It's a PDF. You order it, it comes right to you. $4.99. I'll leave it up there for a few days at that rate. A PDF, 8laces.org. Again, I don't think there's a book out there like this for coaches. So if you're interested in that, $4.99. Again, it comes emailed right to your email. Okay, and then guys, there you have it. We'll open it up now for questions. I know we don't have long. If you have questions, we're not able to get to, send me an email or Twitter DM. I'll get to them.
Yeah, guys, the chat is open if you want to drop a few questions in there. We'll get to a few. I know one that I was asked on Twitter, Coach, was if you can come back on and talk shield punt.
Yeah, we'll make that happen. I love a shield punt, man. We'll make that happen, Coach.
Best advice you have for a young coach to obtain a head coaching job?
Outstanding question, Trey. I'll refer also to my website, coachfore.org. Go to the career. I think it's called career development or something. I've got some really good advice on there, guys. There's a coach. I think he's at Boise right now. I think he's at Boise. Maybe he might be back at Colorado. I can't remember. But I got the story of him on there. So check this out. He played in the NFL, I think, for 7 years. In the NFL, went to Colorado, played for the Buffaloes, offensive lineman, goes to the NFL. You got to read this story on my website because it's an awesome story. Coach Bedell, Bedell. His brother's a head football coach here in SoCal. Okay? He goes, I think it's Dan Hawkins is the head coach there. Okay? And he goes there and he's like, hey, I'd love to come coach. Hawk kind of blows him off and says, go down to if you really want to coach here, go down to the film room and clean it up. He went down to that film room. He spent 3 days. Coach Hawk did not even know he was down in that film room. He got himself in. He had somebody open it. He spent 3 days cleaning up that film room. Cleaning, organizing, dusting, labeling, creating spreadsheets. Goes up, sees Coach Hawk 3 days later. Hey, come on down. I cleaned up that film room you wanted me to clean up. Hawk's like, I didn't even know you were here. What the heck? Goes down there, offers him a job. That's how he starts coaching college football. That's a guy who played in the stinking NFL, gentlemen. So advice to being a head coach. I just did a podcast last night that's going to come out like next Friday. I got a podcast also with Coach Matsumoto from Washington.
He's awesome.
He's tremendous. He went from JV coach to varsity coach in 1 year. And we talked about how he did that. You know how he did that? He did every stinking thing possible that his coaches asked him to do. Coach Moreland, a lot of young coaches these days, and I'm 44, I'm still a young buck, I think, I say myself, but a lot of young coaches, they don't know, they do not have a work ethic. I get messages all the time from guys, they've coached 2 years and they think they're ready to be a head coach. Okay? Guys, do everything and more. I shared that story on that podcast last night that'll come out next week. Okay? And the podcast is called Coach's Locker Podcast. Again, I got a lot of podcasts on there about the coaching process. Okay? Coaching job process. When I was 25 years old, I went to the school, Linfield Christian, and I'm coaching down there. I wanted to be a head coach. I did everything for my head coach, man. I was doing laundry on Sundays. I put together they didn't have a coaching program, a Friday night game day program. I tell my head coach, hey, why don't you guys have a program? No one near, I don't know, no one will do one. I got you, coach. I'll make a program. I put together a 50-page program that summer. And then we sold them, and people were blown away. We didn't have anybody doing our stats. We were going and doing our stats by film Sundays, killing ourselves. Coach, why don't we have a stat crew out here? We had a stat crew when I was in high school. Nobody's done one. Boom. Next year, I had 6 stat girls, and I had a dad overseeing the stats. So when we were doing them on a Palm Pilot. So I organized that, So, and guess what? When he left, he was recruited out to another state to start a football program. Guess who became the new head coach? Coach Fore, 27 years old, because I did everything I could to add value. There's your answer, Coach Moreland. Hope that helps. How do you include the connections in the email? Okay, Gideon asked, how do you include the connections? So when you send that AD your email, hey, Coach, Mr. Fore, you blah, blah, you introduce yourself. Hey, by the way, I'm friends with Coach Stewart, who's the head football coach at your school. I've known him for 7 years. So that's real easy. Just include your connection by, oh, hey, I know so-and-so who's there. Okay, so that's how you would do that. What goes into the portfolio, Coach Gideon asked? Great question. I can't answer that tonight. Okay, but check this out. Coachingportfolio.com, a great resource. Coachingportfolio.com. And again, my website, coachfore.org. I've written a lot about Coaching Portfolio there. But briefly to answer that, you're going to want to put in your practice plan, any kind of documents you've created. Practice plans, philosophies, summer weightlifting program, how you manage grades, how you manage a booster club, how you manage parents. I mean, A to Z on what goes into there. Who are the typical people to contact? Coach G, you're going to have to shut me up, my man, so you tell me when you need to cut. Honestly, tell me.
Hey, how about two more?
Two more. All right. Who are the typical people to contact about what the program needs? What are important to the school? Oh, great question. So you're asking, Kim Pearson's asking, how do we network? Media. Now, you might be in a small market media area. There's maybe only one newspaper. Hey, reach out. Facebook groups. Reach out to booster clubs. I told you about interviewing for a principal job last year. I reached out to the youth football program in that community because I knew something about that community. The youth football program got kicked off of the high school football program practice field. I wanted to know why. It was a small community, one-horse town. I wanted to know the politics of that. Okay? So reach out to anybody and everybody that you can in that community as long as you're okay with them knowing your name is out there. And you might have to say sometimes, hey, please keep this private. Please keep this quiet, my name. I'm leading great change at a low socioeconomic school, but in a district with schools that are regional powerhouses. Advice on selling my improvements for a better program. Great question. So, Coach, you want to sell improvements numerically, okay? So the low socio, whatever you're doing to sell those gains, you want to put that in a bullet point with percentages, okay? And what I mean by that, okay? What I mean by that is, Coach G, is there a way we can save these questions and I can answer them some other way?
I believe I can save the chat.
There's only a few more. Coaches, if I didn't get to your question, send me a DM or an email. So Coach Kretz, the way to show that is a bullet point using percentages. For instance, I don't know what changes you're talking about, but if it's, hey, we increased player participation by 32% over the course of 3 years. Or, one of the things like raising $5,000, that might not mean anything to a program that raises $40,000, right? So if you're interviewing at that school where they raise $40,000, to say you raised $5,000 doesn't look impressive. But if they only raised $2,500 before you took over and now you raised $5,000, don't say you raised $5,000 because you don't know how much they raised. What you say is we increased fundraising by 50% in my first year. Boom. You don't have to say numerically how much that is, if that makes sense. So that's what you want to do on your resumes, guys, is you want to sell your growth using percentages, okay?
Coach, I saved it. I saved the whole
gotcha.
Deal.
Okay.
And I'm going to I'll send it to you.
Let me answer this question real quick from Chris. What suggestion do you have for coaches mid-40s, a large family wants to move in the college game? Honestly, you want to be real? Don't. Unless you know a head football coach at the college level, you're probably not going to move from high school into the college ranks unless you go to NAIA Division II, Division III, where you're making peanuts. Division III defensive coordinator hired me for his resume about 4 years ago. He made $10,000 as a Division III NC2A defensive coordinator. Why would you leave a $70,000, $60,000 teaching job for that? So my advice to you, don't. Stay at the high school level. Unless you know a head coach who's going to get you a great job, stay at the high school level. And I met a lot of guys, Division II, Division III, even some Division I guys. I talked to a coach today who spent 7 years in Division I football, who's now spent the last 15 in high school. Okay? It can be troublesome for guys at that Division I level. Not everyone's getting that big payday, and you're going to chase your tail a lot of times going for that job as opposed to the security and safety for your family at high school level presents. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Coach G, man, much love, much respect to what you're doing for coaches during this shutdown. You're working harder than anybody I know, and I salute you. I honestly do. I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate the invite very much to share this tonight. And let's hook up. Let's get a shield punt one going too, okay?
Yeah. No, let's absolutely do that. And before I let you go, I just want to share one thing. Someone just tweeted, you'll see it, that they took 4 pages of notes from this webinar.
I hope it's helped, guys. I really do. And hit me up. I want to help you as much as I can, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it, Coach. Guys, we got one more in about 10 minutes. All right, a little RPO talk. But Coach Fore, I can't thank you enough, man. We'll definitely get you back on for some shield punt stuff.
All right, we'll see you, Coach. You guys have a great night.
Yes, sir. Take care.
Bye-bye. So thanks, Coach, for checking out Coach's Locker Podcast, episode 55. I really hope that this has been valuable to you. I hope that you've learned something about the interview process, about the applying for jobs process, following up process, etc. Go get that job of your dreams. Let me know I can help you. Twitter, DM, great place to reach me, at Coach Fore, COACHFORE. Or email Chris, CHRIS, at 8laces.org, EIGHTLACES.org. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you next time.